Um, so for the very big, so where I want to begin with this spoiler talk for the Batman is recently I had a very interesting conversation with a friend of mine on Instagram, and we were talking about the legacy of Robert Pattinson and how we've all come to know him over the years. And with this point I'm going to make, I'm going to talk about something that doesn't get mentioned enough, and it's something to do evolving around actors and films as well. And that is the topic of recency bias. Now, we all knew about Robert Pattinson because of Twilight. Now, and obviously based off those films, it was adapted from a very well-known novel that had already had its fans, and having it be a teen drama and a fantasy, that caters for, in my opinion, an audience that evolves around it being women. And the films, they made money, they broke even at the box office. And with breaking even at the box office comes this notoriety of word of mouth. Naturally, because people are seeing a film, people are talking about the people that are in it. And to add, it being a teen drama and being in fantasy with werewolves and what have you. So that film was getting all that praise and all of that notoriety. And obviously when guys saw this film get all this attention, and there was a little bit of prejudice there from another side of fans. Anyone that wasn't into that kind of gossip, teen kind of coming of age stories. And correct me if I'm wrong, these stories, they were in a weird place within Hollywood, because I believe at this time, I think these films came out between 2008, 2012, around that kind of time. And obviously at that time in the box office, superhero genre films were a big thing. So when those films would get these films, the Twilight films, would get their place in the sun, there'd be other fan bases that look at it and go, well, what's the big deal? It's definitely not as good as, the films that I'm watching, the superhero films. So that's what kind of started that kind of void, that discussion online between fans and fandoms. So my point is that over time, so what Robert Pattinson done, he had drove away from being in those big blockbuster films. So, and then wanting to do smaller budget films that were from really great filmmakers. But with that being said, these films, they didn't exactly just blow up the box office. So any of the fans that had watched Pattinson in the Twilight films and then decided that they wanted to continue following him and throughout his filmography, they were seeing the roles that he was doing, right? And that's where people started to really understand that this guy's got a lot of range. He's a very talented actor. He's a chameleon, in my opinion. Like, at this moment in time, my two favorite actors are Sope Dirisu and Robert Pattinson. And so, he was in Good Time. He was in The Lighthouse. He was in Tenet, Devil All the Time. These were the films that I had watched and I start to understand that this guy has so much more to give. So, you know, and then seeing him go through that process, right? And like, my point is, people weren't talking about those performances to a degree, but what had started happening is he was getting this hardcore following, you know, whether it was going to be those fans from Twilight watching Blossom as this actor, or if it was these, you know, hardcore fans that know they're filmmakers and they were seeing Pattinson being attached to these projects. And that's when we realized, look, this guy, he's not a one-trick pony. And in between those four films, they're all completely different interpretations. Like Good Time, he's playing a criminal. The Lighthouse, he's playing a man stranded at sea. And then you got Tenet, you know, a well-spoken, informative agent. And then he plays this slimy, weaselly character as a priest in Devil the Time, you know. And I like the fact that Pattinson in Hollywood, he's not stuck in this box, you know. He's not, you know, he's not doing a Dwayne Johnson, doing a buddy cop, you know, good cop, bad cop film for the last 5 years, you know. And I love Dwayne Johnson, but now I'm just getting tedious. I want to see the guy do something different. Yeah, so Pattinson's not stuck in that box. So then you see him act in The Batman, right? And then you see the idiots online that say, oh, he's Twilight Boy, he's this. These are fans that are stuck to maybe one or two genres of film, and they just think an actor is this way, right? And it's the most infuriating thing that I stumble across amongst film, TV, and, well, pop culture in general. You know, it's something that, you know, I always feel like nobody should be in a position to judge a filmmaker or an actor if they haven't experienced at least 80% of the filmography. You know, even if I watch a film and I think to myself, that was bad, right? I still think to myself, I wonder what else they've done. You know, maybe this was their, you know, their bump in the road in their journey, you know. And it's the same thing like when I watch a good film, I think to myself, you know what? It wasn't a masterpiece, but I really enjoyed myself. And I take a note of that filmmaker and I think to myself, I've got an eye on them. I'll be interested to see how their career progresses, especially a filmmaker and from the jump, and they've made a solid film. You never know, man. There's been a lot of filmmakers that I've counted over the years where their first couple of films, they haven't been mind-blowing, but they've been good. But then eventually those people, they eventually then go on to create that masterpiece, you know? Because with filmmaking, it's a evolving door. You're always learning, you know? But to circle back to Rob Pattinson, right? Then you see all of the people eat on their words, and they actually say, you know what, Pattinson he actually done his thing. He was actually excellent in the film. Now, it peeves me a little bit that those same people that were cussing him off, right, don't understand that for 5 years he's been killing it anyway. He hasn't just, you get what I'm saying? Like, he hasn't just been a good actor just from the Batman. He didn't, you know what I mean? That, you know, he didn't just pull the Batman performance out of his arse. You know, like, the guy has been putting in the hard work in aces in spades, right, for the last 5 years. I just do not feel enough people give the right credit where it's due, right? And it's annoying, you know. And it was still, in a way, annoying me that people will, when they mention Rob Haskin, be like, yeah, the Batman, you know, but what about the other 4, 5, 6, 7 films he was in that he was excellent in, you know? I mean, there's films that I want to watch, but I haven't got round to. I want to watch High Life and I want to watch, it was in the Cronenberg film as well. So, you know, I think it's funny, a lot of people just think that these performances just kind of fall out the sky or something. But, you know, it's like, you know, when you saw the hysteria online about him being Batman, it's like, oh, it's Twilight Boy. But he's been putting in the work. And look, it's the same thing for how I feel Denis Villeneuve's been treated in the last couple of months. All of a sudden, all this praise has come to Villeneuve. But this guy has been, he's another one who's been killing it for the last 5 years, you know. Blade Runner 2049, Prisoners, Arrival, Sicario. You know, but then when one film breaks even, it's like, he's amazing. But what happens is when those conversations amount and when they happen, I do like to see the hardcore fans are like, you know, you only just saw the tip of the iceberg. You haven't really seen everything that this person can do. And then that's when you see them mention the other films. And that's how, you know, fans become a little bit more informative about the content that they're watching. What is happening? What's happening, Malcolm? Welcome to the stream. Do you know what? I don't know how this is happening, but I need to charge this laptop. It's going to die. Shit. 1 second, people. 1 second. I'll be back. Oh, God. All right, people, let's all pray to God that this thing don't die on me. Oh, God. Got to do this quick. Sorry, I'm going to pick you lot up for a second. All right, put you right there. All right, let's see. All right, is this thing all right? What's going on? All right, let's all pray to God this thing doesn't switch off. But anyway, let's just get into, I've had my little rant about recency bias. So let's talk about the first opening moments of the Batman. In the beginning, I don't know. I thought to myself it could have been Catwoman that was zoning into Mitchell's house with the binoculars. But boy, was I wrong. Then I just love the build up and the suspense of it. You know, Mitchell's looking at his discussion for his place to be mayor on the TV. The lights go out. And when I really think about it, that must have been a really hard shot to get, because I'm trying to figure out. So based off my first couple of watches, it gives you the illusion that it's the light from the TV that's reflecting onto Riddler's glasses, but that is not the case. That is the lamps that are over in the corner of the room that are illuminating his glasses. Now, you would have to perfectly place a lamp in place to get the reflection off of his glasses and have it illuminate to that degree, but also not fully show him. And the Riddler's introduction was very similar to when we got to see when we saw Joker in The Dark Knight walk into the room with all the mob bosses there. He says, "Would you like to see magic trick?" And I would like to make it disappear. It was that same holy shit moment when people saw the Riddler with his glasses just illuminating in the darkness. And to add, I think it is both characters, the Riddler and the Batman, they both use their darkness to a certain extent to achieve their mission. Obviously, the Riddler, he just goes as far as left field as possible to get his point across. But again, you can see point of view mildly. But yeah, both characters emerge from the darkness, and I think that is a brilliant theme that's running throughout the story. And I just love how this film went and dived deep into Batman's he's warped psychosis. He's prowling the street in hopes that someone is going to start trouble so that he can beat them. And if you really think about it, that is a messed up thing to be thinking. It is nihilistic. He's walking, he's giving his narration, he's praying that someone is going to do something. And in a way, it makes you think, what a horrible thing to think. And I love how Matt Reeves doesn't make Batman feel like he's got everything sorted out, and you wouldn't, and to anyone that I see it a lot in, just looking at the comments on YouTube, Facebook, or wherever, from the people that didn't like the film, they say, "Oh, he's emo Batman. He doesn't smile. He doesn't do this. He doesn't do that." But I think that, there's a phrase that's used in comedy, and it goes by, "It's funny until it happens to you." So I feel that all of these people that are throwing this out there, right, to their fortune, they haven't had something crap happen to them just yet, right? And in a way, I pray that nothing ever happens to them, right? But for people to blurt that out, obviously they're not on that mature wavelength yet, And yeah, Matt Reeves doesn't treat Batman like as if he's got everything sorted out, and Mark Latier, who runs Soft White Underbelly, he's got a phrase that he said himself, and he said, people only do things out of love or out of fear, and he does Bruce Wayne embodying the mantle of Batman in this film is because he actually doesn't know how to resonate with this dark emotion that he feels in himself. So he feels the need to go and beat people. It's his only, it's his only outway. It's his only release from feeling that way, and that comes from a point of fear, And as we see from the beginning of this film, he believes that everything should be dealt with a hard fist and vengeance. But when he gets to the end, of this film, and he realizes that, in a way, because he was going out there beating everyone to a pulp as Batman and not taking up his entrepreneur duties as Bruce Wayne, you know, it gave the Riddler the motivation and the, you know, the inspiration to take his psychotic tendencies to a new level and kill one of those political figures in the government. And in a way, both the Batman and the Riddler, they both fight for justice. But obviously, where that line gets drawn, and when that line has been crossed, especially from the Riddler side, is that he kills people. And obviously, that's a code of conduct that Batman does not stand by. And that's why you get the fire and ice, you get the immovable object meets an unstoppable force between those two characters. And they're both linked to the Waynes, and also another thing that's mind-boggling is that had Bruce taken up the mantle of his family name, then just after his parents' death, then the Riddler might have not been created. He would have had the funding. He would have lived in a good orphanage, you know. And that is where the real heart of the story is, you know. And I just think the way that Matt Reeves just nailed it all on the head was just fucking superb. Because it always feels like some of these villains, when they get to the third act, like they have a motivation, but then there's an element of them where they feel like they've become generic, like as if, okay, now instead of, you know, my motivation was to go after these 5 people, now I have to kill everyone. You know, it's like with the Riddler. I don't think his main goal was to actually kill, well, all of the innocent members of the public. I think that what had happened is, you know, all of the Riddler's inspired posse, they took what he was saying, but then they were going to turn it into something else, you know. So when you saw them all, you know, set up to shoot this mayor, it was a thing of, he would have probably just wanted her to, you know, wanted her to be offed. But then it just makes you think, what other nutcase is there that's thinking, right, I'm just going to attack these people, and that's where the element of the dread plays in, and that's where Batman comes and spins chins and sends Madame to Narnia, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, but yeah, like, I didn't think, it felt like the Riddler had purposely, you know, created those floods as a contingency plan, you know. So yeah, he's a cool villain, and I loved everything that Paul Dano gave to the role. And yeah, let's now talk about Catwoman. She was brilliant. And now, like how I was talking about in my movie review, there was a line of dialogue that came from this character, and it you know, it took us back, right? The white privilege line was used, and now I'm going to be this is going to get very mature now. We're going to play devil's advocate. We're going to look at things from both sides, you know, because that's how we do it. It seems like as if when this word gets mentioned, it always gets mentioned from films and TV series that aren't even, that they aren't even well written. They're all third person exposition dumps, just terrible writing, right? And I felt like when this was dropped, especially when I watched it my second view, it actually started to make a lot more sense to me. Now, if you look at where this character is, right, it's established that Selina Kyle, she doesn't have a relationship with her father whatsoever, right? Even though, you know, there's no relationship there whatsoever. Her best friend had died, right? And because the DA and everyone within the law enforcement is under the thumb of Carmine Falcone, it's not like as if Catwoman can just wake up one day and go, you know what? I'm just gonna leave the club because fuck it. Because I feel like it, right? If that's the case, then the same thing that happened to her friend would happen to her. She'd be killed instantly, because all of these girls, they know what's going on there. They know that law enforcement's under the thumb of Carmine Falcone. Really, Carmine Falcone is pulling the strings, and he's the one that is funding the police in a sense. So it's not like she can ever at any point just go, right, I'm just going to make a different life for myself. It's the same element when, I don't know, come on, let's be honest here. It's like, do you guys think that, do you think most people who are, like prostitutes, do you think some of them can just get up and leave? I'm just saying, it's just a thought, like, to take in account, not to say Catwoman is, but I'm just saying, because of all the things that she knows, it's impossible in a sense, so that line came from a point of her anger. And I don't believe that she looks at every white person and thinks, oh, you're white privilege, It's like her surroundings is, in a way, all that she knows. She's never ventured out, seen the world for herself in a sense, And you see that near the end of the film when she takes the decision to leave Gotham. And no doubt will she be back, And that was her being set free from, that crap establishment down there, So let's, what else should we touch upon in this spoiler discussion? Man, let's talk about the future, because I feel for the sequel, I don't know how to feel about having the Joker being introduced. I would much rather have Mr. Freeze be introduced, because as we saw with the early adaptations of Mr. Freeze, he was goofy and he was, but when you really boil down the story, it's very tragic and it's very, very poignant. And I think Matt Reeves could really do something great with that character. And his character's not a generic, like, I just want to blow up everyone. And, he's got an actual cause. He's doing everything with the will and the motivation to save his wife. And I think that is a really interesting concept to play around with and explore. It's got that Breaking vibe quality to it, which I really like. And yeah, I think he should definitely be the second main villain in hopefully what will be a trilogy from Matt Reeves. And then I think the third film to seal it all off with a big bang is to then introduce Joker, you know. But it always feels like especially with Batman, it always feels like they always couple two villains in every film. I think with the exception of The Dark Knight Rises with Christopher Nolan's films, so he was just very case in point in that film. And then you had Catwoman was in that film also, but she was like kind of an anti-hero. You didn't really know what side she was on until the last third act of the film. But yeah, like when I really do think about Batman as a character and all of the characters that are attached to him, it is a huge job to do. Because with all of these characters, it's not like you can just throw them in. And for example, you can't throw in a character like the Joker and just say, well, we're just going to make him three-dimensional, give him a little bit of character development, sayonara, that's it. You know, that would annoy the fans to to another level. You can't just shoehorn these great characters for the sake of them. You have to use them and you have to utilize them, you know. So man, you know, when you really think about doing Batman, you've got to do those villains justice as well. So I don't know. I feel like, because if we're looking at the trajectory of where this Bruce Wayne's going to go, he's still. It would feel weird if, like, in the first 30 minutes of the sequel, all of a sudden, Bruce Wayne has expertly adopted the persona of the playboy billionaire, you know, as a front to the public. That would be like, but I just, you know what I mean? I just watched the film, or, you know, how many years it would be ago since when we have the sequel, that we saw him in a 3-hour film where he wanted nothing to do with people. Then, I don't know, like in the first hour, all of a sudden, look, I'm I'm happy, you know. I'm all is good with the world, and I'm cheerful and I'm happy, and I'm not quote unquote emo Batman, you know, as the casuals like to say. So I think Mr. Freeze, and do you know what? I was just on Facebook, looking at the Arkham Knight games, the Batman games. There's a character called Pig. I think it's Pig Face or Pig Clay Face as well. But I've been hearing a lot of people saying that they'd rather have a solo film for Clayface. Oh man, I think definitely Mr. Freeze. And then who would? That's the thing. Who would be that little add-on to the side? Because I would go Mr. Freeze definitely, but I don't know who would partner with him off the side. But then at the same time, the Riddler and the Joker are still at large. So, but then that goes to question what they're going to do with this Arkham Knight series as well. Are they going to have Batman come beat them all up in there? Are we going to have a Batverse? I guess we're going to have to see how it's all going to play out. But I think by the third film, we will see, you know, Matt Reeves as Bruce Wayne fully adopt this, you know, kind of, you know, the Bruce Wayne persona in the third film. And I think what would be interesting would be to introduce Hush and then have, you know, everyone in a Court of Owls and things like that. But the second maybe in the second film, Mr. Freeze and Bane. And then the third one, he's just got to stop like 5-6 different villains. You know. So I think second one, Mr. Freeze, top priority. Bane as well. Third one, Iron Man has to fight everyone. And just to cap off on this spoiler talk, I just want to talk about that, the introduction to the Battinson Batmobile. Man, watching that thing rev up in IMAX, oh, man, I get goosebumps now, man. What an incredible scene. I mean, the sound it was making was freaking terrifying. And do you know what? I think that the sound, I'm always that guy that clutches at straws, but you know, you guys should know me by now. But the sound of that engine sounded very similar to Catwoman's friend's screams on the phone. And that kind of added that eeriness, the haunting nature to it all, you know. That car is a character in itself, just a muscle car, just a fucking battering ram. You know, it's not got that sleek edge to it. I absolutely loved the snorri cam shot, putting the camera mounted to the back of the engine. Amazing cinematography. Absolutely brilliant. And I'm just going to add another thing. If you notice that the Riddler, Catwoman, and Batman, they all enter Mitchell's Sky Landing, if you've noticed, well. And in my eyes, I see that as hidden subtext exposition for Matt Reeves telling the audience that all of these characters are so close to death without even knowing. They're all putting themselves in situations where they don't know the repercussions, and that all of them are in over their head. So that was my little take from a couple of scenes that I was seeing. But yeah, guys, I'm going to end it here. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for joining. If you've watched this discussion in its entirety, thank you. As always, look forward to more videos, and I'll see you in the next one. I can't wait for the sequel. Cheers.